us the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes. Then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place,
when we tell a story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place.
when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place. Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor, Michigan. We are a liberal, progressive, spiritual community physically located in Ann Arbor that has been meeting continuously since 1865, bringing alive the vision of what it can mean to be a people of faith, embodying values and ethics, bringing them alive for ourselves and the wider world. We're delighted you've chosen to be with us this morning. I'm the Reverend Manish Mishra-Marzetti, serving our community as senior minister, and alongside me today are the Reverend Hartley, our executive minister, Stella Anderson, our acting director of spiritual growth and development, Carter Smith, our acting director of music ministries, Allison Halerz, our pianist-in-residence, and Mike Halerz, our community's technological consultant. If you're joining us this morning via live stream, you are in for a beautiful experience. Our worship time together today will be abbreviated and followed immediately after that by one of our congregation's biennial congregational meetings, all community meetings in which democratic process is brought alive, in which important matters related to the governance and future of our community are discussed. If you are a newcomer to our community, not yet a member, or if you are an ongoing friend of the community, we invite you to stay for that as well. It's an important opportunity to learn more about our community and see the important matters that we take up in deciding the future direction of our congregation and our community as a whole. If you're watching on demand later on, we hope that you'll enjoy and appreciate this service as an abbreviated, as a shorter version of what we typically do on a Sunday, but nonetheless, we hope, meaningful. As we find a place of stillness and centering in our hearts, I'd invite us now to prepare for our chalice lighting, and helping us light our chalice this morning is Stella Anderson. Thank you, Stella. We light in our chalice in Unitarian Universalism to mark the kindling of hope and possibility in our hearts, and also at times as a flame of memory. It has been a week in which we've been reminded that it is a time of ongoing cultural losses for us. A few weeks ago, our community lost Desmond Tutu. More recently, Betty White, feminist, animal rights activist, cultural icon. And then just recently, Thich Nhat Hanh, another beautiful global leader for spiritual grounding and health. We honor all of these cultural figures, as well as that ongoing desire in our hearts to bring possibility alive for ourselves and for our world. Would you join me at home in offering these words of our community's familiar chalice lighting? We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Thank you, Stella. We are also a community that is guided not by any particular dogmatic creed, an expectation that we all think perfectly alike about the nature or purpose of being human, but rather by our promises, the promises we make to one another in community as we seek to find the meaning that speaks to each of us. We refer to this as our community's covenant. Would you join your hearts and voices once again as we offer these words, the words of our community's covenant? The spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth and love, and to help one another. May it always be so.
We don't eat our classmates. Words by Ryan T. Higgins. Hey kids, you will never be eaten by a T-Rex. They are extinct, I promise. Penelope Rex was nervous. It's not every day a little T-Rex starts school. What are my classmates going to be like? Will they be nice? How many teeth will they have? This was very important. Penelope's mom bought her a new backpack with ponies on it. Ponies were Penelope's favorite because ponies are delicious. Penelope's dad packed her a lunch of 300 tuna sandwiches and 1 apple juice. Finally, the big day came, and Penelope Rex was very surprised to find out that all of her classmates were children. So she ate them, because children are delicious. Penelope Rex, said Mrs. Noodleman, we don't eat our classmates. Please spit them out at once. So she did. It was not the best way to start school. Still, Penelope was determined to have a good first day. She tried hard to make friends at recess. She finger painted some of her best work. She even saved Griffin Emery a seat at lunch. You can sit here. Penelope started to notice everyone was making friends but her. It was lonely. When she got home, her dad asked about her first day of school. I didn't make any friends, Penelope cried. None of the children wanted to play with me. Penelope Rex, her father asked, did you eat your classmates? Well, Maybe sort of, just a little bit. Sometimes it's hard to make friends, said her dad, especially if you eat them. You see, Penelope, children are the same as us on the inside, just tastier. That gave Penelope a lot to think about. The next day, Penelope tried really hard, but poor Penelope, she could not stop herself from eating her classmates. Mrs. Noodleman, Penelope ate William Amoto again. And they were all afraid of her. Except Walter. Walter was a goldfish. So Penelope tried to make friends with him. Will you be my friend? Chomp! Eee! Cried Penelope. He's eating my finger! Wah! Once Penelope found out what it was like to be someone's snack, she lost her appetite for children. She stopped eating her classmates, even when Cece Woodman spilled barbecue sauce all over herself. And soon Penelope made friends. Found you! Want a brownie? I helped make them. Now, even when children look especially delicious, she peeks at Walter and remembers what it's like when someone tries to eat you. And Walter the goldfish stares right back at her and licks his lips. Because dinosaurs are delicious. The end. We've probably all gotten that email or that text, voicemail, or letter. The one where you only get a few words into it before your blood pressure starts rising. A few weeks ago, I got one of these emails from a woman in my personal life who has a history of being angry, entitled, and critical of everyone around her. She didn't even try to ease into her usual biting remarks. She just launched right in. By the third sentence, my mind was already going blank, my hands were clenching into fists, and my breathing was getting shallow. I started mentally composing my furious response, and boy, was it going to be a doozy. But then I paused long enough to recognize that I was too agitated to do or say anything helpful in that moment. So I closed the email and moved on to other things. Later, when I was calmer, I reflected more and eventually settled on a response that was short but civil. I'd like to say that then I was able to put her and that email out of my mind completely. But the truth is that the dark cloud of her meanness and my righteous indignation kept drifting into my thoughts. I'd be brushing my teeth and I'd start contemplating all the ways I could snub her the next time we were in public together. Or I'd be driving to work while composing the scorching email I really wanted to send. It was exhausting. My experiences in life and ministry have taught me that people who are in pain often cause pain. So I try to draw healthy boundaries for myself while having compassion for the hurt that people have probably experienced in their lives. As one of my favorite authors, Glennon Doyle, puts it, all unkindness is pain deflection. Folks who think pain is a hot potato toss it to the next person so they don't get burned. I don't want to keep tossing the hot potato. I want to set it down. Unfortunately, in the case of this email, I resisted the initial urge to toss it back to her or on to someone else, but I also wasn't setting it down. I was holding it tight, letting it scald my fingers, and then seething with resentment at her about that. My intention for dealing with difficult people and my lived reality
were not exactly matching up. This incident was a reminder to me of just how easily our interactions with others can trigger reactivity within us. In those moments, the higher thinking parts of our brains go offline and the parts related to survival kick in. Like the dinosaur Penelope in We Don't Eat Our Classmates, we mean well, but sometimes we still end up chomping the person in front of us. The good news is that we can choose another way. In fact, there are 2 practices that have been helpful in my own life that we can draw on to help us interact with others in ways that better align with our intentions. The first practice is taking what the Buddhist teacher and writer Tara Brach calls the sacred pause. It's taking some time, whether it's a few seconds or even months, to stop and be present with what is. The more that we can pause, the more freedom we have to choose our next response rather than simply reacting. Of course, there are times and circumstances and relationships that make pausing easier, like an email from an acquaintance that we can just walk away from for a while. And there are times when the circumstances and relationships make it harder, like a family member making a hurtful comment over Thanksgiving dinner. In both cases, making regular time for spiritual practices like mindfulness and meditation can help us to cultivate the ability to pause. It can also be helpful to brainstorm some of the situations that are most triggering for us, and then ways that we can find pause in those moments. It can be anything from taking some deep breaths, to making an excuse to go to the bathroom, to simply telling the other person that we need a break. The second practice that can help us is, in many ways, just an extended, more intentional form of taking a sacred pause. It's the practice of reflecting on our struggles with others and then asking the simple question, what's underneath that? We then take whatever answer comes up, even if it doesn't seem to make sense, and we ask again, what's underneath that? And so on and so on. It sounds simple, but I like to call this practice the onion meditation because it helps us to slowly peel back the layers until we get to some of the core fears and needs underneath our reactions to other people. For example, in the case of the angry email, I asked myself, what's underneath my lingering resentment at this particular woman? The answer that came to me was, well, I'm tired of people treating other people unkindly and unfairly. But what's underneath that? Well, I know people do it out of the pain in their own lives, and I want to have compassion for them, but I also wish that they developed more accountability and were held accountable by other people. But what's underneath that? Well, it reminds me of the lack of accountability in my own family growing up. But what's underneath that? Well, the lack of accountability didn't make me feel safe and connected to my family. But what's underneath that? Not feeling safe and connected to my family made it harder to find safety and connection in the wider world. But what's underneath that? I have a deep need to feel safe and connected to other people. Now, of course, that thread is a more simplified version of what might actually happen in this exercise, because often multiple threads come up, and so it's helpful to journal or do artwork or whatever helps you to process what comes up. What's interesting is that even in the case of seemingly straightforward questions like my frustration with an acquaintance, if we peel back enough layers, we can eventually get to a deep need. And this is where the magic happens. When we understand our deepest needs, we can see how those needs shape our view of the world, and then how our view of the world shapes our thoughts, and how our thoughts shape our emotions, and how our emotions shape our actions, and then how our actions shape our relationships in ways that, for better or worse, often reinforce our original view of the world. It's all connected. And so the more clearly we can see what's at the center, the better able we are to align our lives with our true intentions rather than being driven by subconscious needs. Not to mention that understanding our deepest needs can help us to have more compassion for ourselves and for others. We won't engage in this practice together in this moment because everyone needs different materials and amounts of time, but I encourage you to reflect on a relationship or interaction in your life that you're struggling with right now, and find some time to sit with the question, but what's underneath that? Even when you think you've said everything you can say, try to ask it just one more time to see what comes up. Wherever it does take you, may these practices move you toward greater insight, possibility, and freedom. And may we all live into our deepest intentions for our lives and for our relationships with one another. May it be so.
Come, the fount of every blessing, tune our hearts to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. While the hope of life's perfection fills our heart with joy and love, teach us ever to be faithful. May we still thy goodness prove. Come, the fount of every vision, tune our eyes to what may come. See the lion and the young lamb dwell together in thy home. Hear the cries of war fall silent, fill our love grow like the sun. When we all serve one another, then our heaven is begun. Come, the fount of inspiration, turn our lives to higher ways. Lift our gloom and desperation, show the promise of this day. Help us find ourselves in union, help our hands tell of our love. With thine aid, O fount of justice, earth be fair as heaven above. When we all serve one another, then our heaven is begun.
As we go forward into our congregational meeting now, may we remember that it is up to each one of us to make channels for the streams of love. And that begins by pausing to look within. There may we find compassion for ourselves and others. There may we find healing for ourselves and others. For love truly has overflowing streams to fill us every one. Amen, and blessed be.